You wake up, open the window, and the world is quieter in a way you can't name. The birds outside your apartment are oddly still. The spider web in the corner of the balcony is empty and perfectly clean, as if someone replaced it overnight. You make coffee, take the trash out, and notice the porch light isn't haloed by that usual nighttime drift of tiny wings. News breaks by mid-morning. It isn't just you. Every insect on Earth is gone. Not fewer. Not seasonal. Gone. No mosquitoes, no bees, no flies, no beetles, no ants, no butterflies, no termites, no wasps, no dragonflies, no moths. Nothing that buzzes, clicks, hums, swarms, stings, pollinates, decomposes, or generally shows up uninvited at a picnic. At first, people cheer. By the end of the first week, the cheering stops. The first day feels like a miracle. Hikers venture out without bug spray. Campers leave tent flaps open. Restaurants drag tables onto patios, and no one waves anything away from their food. Allergists report a curious calm. For a brief moment, it seems like spring without hay fever. There's talk that maybe insect-borne disease is finished forever. No more malaria, dengue, Zika, West Nile, Lyme carried by ticks. Emergency rooms brace for heat stroke and car wrecks, but not for bites. Parents let kids play outside right up until sunset, because sunset no longer means swarms. Then the second layer of reality begins to show through the smooth surface. Grocery buyers notice fruit shipments are lighter. Gold-green bins of cucumbers and zucchinis run out early. Orchard owners file odd reports. Blooms everywhere, fruit set nowhere. In the space of a news cycle, the average person learns a plain, impolite fact about food. Much of it depends on pollinators, and most pollinators are insects. Almonds, apples, cherries, blueberries, cucumbers, melons, squash, coffee, cocoa. The list keeps growing, and it reads like a pantry. Wind and gravity can pollinate grains, and some trees manage on their own. But a huge slice of the color and variety of our diet exists because tiny, unglamorous workers moved pollen from here to there while we weren't looking. In normal life, farms hedge. They rent honeybee hives in spring. They rely on native bees, butterflies, beetles, wasps, flies, and 1,000 other specialists that don't send invoices. When the insect world vanishes, those silent partnerships vanish too. Farmers stand in orchards and listen to the silence. A California almond grower looks at the white foam of blossoms and understands in his bones that white foam is about to turn into brown disappointment. A tomato grower explains on local radio that tomato flowers can set fruit with vibration. It's called buzz pollination, and that bumblebees are perfect for it. Without bumblebees, you can do it with an electric toothbrush, one flower at a time, which is a charming science lesson and a ridiculous plan for a 100-acre field. Supermarkets hold their shape at first. Apples still look like apples on day 4 because apples in a crate today grew last season. But availability starts to feel off. Imported berries vanish. Some vegetables keep showing up because our staples, wheat, rice, corn, are wind-pollinated grasses and hadn't yet noticed the disaster. Milk and meat still arrive because cows eat grass and hay. But the edges of the menu begin to fray. A chef posts a video about reworking dessert because vanilla is an orchid pollinated in the wild by a specific bee. And what we take for granted depends on a century of hand-pollination in plantations that now have to scale that up without the insects that used to do the free half of the job. Coffee and chocolate, plants with complicated pollination ecologies, become suddenly more precious as growers scramble for stopgaps. Out in the world, something stranger happens. The dead do not go away. Flies, beetles, and ants are the cleanup crew of Earth. They disassemble what life leaves behind and return it to the world. Without them, carcasses last longer. City sanitation finds roadkill lingering, and in that lingering, other actors move in. Rats surge in tunnels country after country. Feral dogs grow bolder at the edges of towns. Vultures and crows take their shot at the sudden buffet, but they were part of a chain that used to include billions of insects converting flesh to soil. Compost piles slow down. Forest floors hold on to leaves longer. The brown snow of autumn doesn't melt into humus as quickly. and nutrient cycles cease just enough to matter. Gardeners who prided themselves on living soil meet an odd, reluctant stillness in their beds. The aroma of earth after rain smells different when so many tiny legs are missing under the surface. The animal kingdom reshuffles. Bats go hungry and change their routes, then their numbers. Swallows and swifts carve empty loops through the evening air and fail to feed nestlings. Trout rivers run clearer than usual for a season and then emptier, because mayflies and caddisflies that use tories by the millions no longer exist to feed the fish, and the fish no longer exist to feed the osprey. And the osprey no longer exist where the fish used to be. And an entire fly road industry discovers that beauty was built on the backs of bugs. In the tropics, leafcutter ants stop mowing the forest and the forest changes shape. In the savanna, dung beetles stop rolling and, without that small comedy multiplied by the billions, nutrients lock up where they fall and grasslands knit differently, which means grazing animals move differently, which means predators do too. We discover in real time and to our discomfort that pest was a lazy word for a job we did not see. Meanwhile, back in the cities, people start to sleep worse. The silence they enjoyed weirdly messes with them. You could open a window at night before and hear a mosquito's small threat or a cricket's looping violin, both background to the human hum. Now there is only the human hum. Streetlights glow into nothing. Porch lamps become theatrical spotlights on empty stages. It turns out we liked being surrounded by a universe of tiny somebodies more than we admitted. Children draw butterflies for school art class, and teachers catch themselves before they correct wing patterns that will never flutter past a field again. Government food agencies hold emergency briefings. Quiet memoranda become headlines. Hand-pollination becomes a bridge strategy. Farmers recruit armies of seasonal workers in white suits with soft brushes, 1,000 human bees moving deliberately from flower to flower. In places where that fails to scale, engineers arrive with prototypes, vibrating frames that shake pollen loose, small drones that blow pollen plumes across rows, swarms of quadcopters carrying electrostatic paddles to collect and deliver. Fields fill with the soft electronic whine of a stand-in ecology. Some of it works, awkwardly. A few big crops are saved with methods borrowed from seed production greenhouses. But it is like trying to replace the ocean with bottled water. You can do a little. You cannot do it everywhere, all at once, for long. Prices rise where pollination used to be free. Strawberries become seasonal in a way people have not felt in decades. Almond milk is suddenly a luxury. Honey vanishes like a fairy tale. A generation learns that sweetness had a living origin story and that you cannot just turn it back on with a switch. Coffee shop chalkboards change menus, and the barista who used to remember your order remembers that you used to order something you cannot order now. There is irritation in the air, then resignation, then a new, temporary cuisine. People pretend to like chicory the way their great-grandparents did. Public health goes through a whiplash. Mosquito-borne disease collapses. That part is real. Malaria clinics report ghost days. But the joy is uneven. Ticks, which are not insects, are gone only if the catastrophe took all arthropods. And in this thought experiment, we drew the line at insects. So Lyme disease stays, and new ecological balances make it better or worse region by region, depending on deer, mice, and predators. Meanwhile, kitchen hygiene has to adapt to the slower disappearance of waste. The human habit of covering what we throw away with a layer of soil or plastic runs into the fact that without insects tunneling and turning and eating, garbage behaves differently. City managers hold awkward press conferences about composting without the little workers that used to do the heavy lifting. Scientists who specialize in soil microbiomes become as famous as rock stars for about a month, then stay famous in a quieter, more useful way. Schools rewrite quickly. Biology lessons stop treating insects as an afterthought. In 1,000 classrooms, somebody says out loud, "I didn't know they were that important." And 1,000 teachers nod with a lump in their throats because they did know and could not make the knowing stick until the world performed a terrible demonstration. Museums mount emergency exhibits using their own collections to tell a story about what just disappeared and why it mattered. Artists respond the way artists do. Murals of absent wings, poems about summers with a different sound, fashion that references carapace and compound eye in a way that feels like respect, not costume. At the level of ordinary life, families adjust in ways both silly and significant. Picnic baskets include fine mesh covers again, not because of flies, but because rats got bolder during that first summer of unclaimed calories and people pushed back with better containers. Backyard gardens move from heirloom showpieces to practical, seed-saving mini operations using wind-pollinated varieties and selfers. Neighborhoods share seeds more deliberately because something delicate just left the world and the sense of fragility sticks to everything. Kids collect stamps with butterflies on them and ask if they're extinct. Parents explain the difference between no longer here and gone forever in a way that shakes them a little because the difference feels academic right now. Then comes the wide, stubborn human response. We try to build our way out. Engineers refine pollination drones. The first versions were loud and expensive. The fifth generation is quieter, glides between branches with a soft electric sigh, and charges from portable solar mats laid between rows. Swarms are coordinated by software that learned from years of studying bees. The irony of using bee wisdom after bees are gone is not lost on anyone. Some startups go bigger and stranger. Foggers that blow pollen into orchards timed to flowers, opening by the minute, warehouse-scale pollination halls where fruit sets under a sky of LEDs tuned to mimic dawn after dawn. Governments fund insect restoration projects that look like fiction at first, resurrecting hardy analogs from deep freeze collections, rebuilding habitat at scale, rewilding corridors through farm country. There are debates about whether to use gene-edited replacements that resist disease and can thrive in a changed world. There are equally fierce debates about whether we have any idea what we are doing. As the months turn to a year, the most surprising absences aren't the ones on the plate. They are the absences in the mind. A grandmother realizes her morning routine involved watching a moth at the porch lamp while her tea steeped. A teenager who paints bees on a wall at school is stopped by a teacher who cries for a moment in the hallway and says, "Keep going." People rediscover that affection can be fierce for things that used to annoy them. In 1,000 novels, the weather outside becomes a character because the world inside is trying to learn how to be a little quieter without forgetting the buzz that used to surround it. There is adaptation because there is always adaptation. Farmers switch varieties to those less dependent on animal pollination. Plant breeders accelerate a century's work into a decade, selecting for wind-pollinated versions of favorites or flowers that can set fruit without a visit. We learn the fine craft of growing more with fewer ecological partners. It works. And it does not. The world becomes more beige. Diets center more on grains, and fewer on brightly colored, fragile things that used to move from field to plate at the speed of a bee. It is not famine. It is not the end. It is a narrowing, and humans feel it like a room with beautiful windows that have been shuttered. Because people are people, the event becomes a mirror. Conspiracy theories proliferate. Some blame a government experiment. Some blame aliens. Some blame climate change, and they are not entirely wrong, because climate change stressed many insect populations before this, and may stress whatever comes next. There are new cults that see the silence as a judgment, and new movements that treat the silence as a call. There are farmers who become folk heroes because they figured out a hand technique that works for apple blossoms and shared it freely. There are small towns that build pollination co-ops and survive when others falter. There are software engineers who discover love for dirt and spend their weekends as apprentice growers, and there are growers who discover love for code and teach drones to dance. Living through a world without insects teaches a few durable things to anyone who pays attention. It teaches that pest is a projection, not an identity. A mosquito can be a vector of disease and a vital midwife for swallows, and the universe does not ask your permission to hold both truths at once. It teaches that free labor is often invisible labor, and that we are richer than we admit because we live on a planet that does so much work without billing us. It teaches that comfort is not the same as health. The first day of this new world felt comfortable, and comfort lied. It teaches that progress is not magic. It is a shape made by systems and that you cannot pull on one thread without feeling the whole cloth move. If we had to live there for long, we would. We would build odd machines, invent awkward rituals, and learn to love new flavors. We would write recipes for a spring without strawberries and still find ways to celebrate. We would tell children stories about the time when the air used to have wings, and they would imagine it the way we imagine in forests full of mammoths, alive in the mind, just out of reach. Some of us would work to bring it back. The rest would learn to hold the loss without letting it make us small. But if we had a choice, if this were a thought experiment and not a sentence, we would choose a world with insects in it. We would choose the buzz and the nuisance and the allergy and the bite, because the cost of comfort was too high. We would plant hedgerows and tolerate messy edges, and leave a little fallow and teach neighborhoods that oddity lawn is not the same as a living one. We would buy honey like it was a thank you note. We would put lights on motion sensors so the night could be night. We would learn the names of a dozen neighbors with 6 legs, and our children would learn the rest. And when summer came back and the porch light haloed again, we would step outside with our coffee and listen, not to the silence, but to the small, holy noise that says the world is working.